You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts. You'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other bat-related shows that also love to dive into other nerdy subjects we all love to frolic about in our free time. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon. If you like what's going on with the show and you want to help keep those generators running in the Wayne Manor study, just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 101, Golden Dawn. Joining me for this special occasion, he's making a miraculous return to the show. He's a fellow Midwesterner. He's the host of the Batman on Film podcast. He's the proud papa of one Ryan Powers, and he's also my Texas bunkmate. It's Garret Grev. Garret, welcome back to the Batman Book Club. It's been a while.
It is great to be back. It has been a while. Batman Earth 1 Volume 3. Is that the last time I was on? Or did you
Halloween?
Halloween. Yeah, the Halloween episode.
The annual.
Ryan Lauer.
Yeah.
It is the end of April, basically. Yeah. Why are you so popular that so many other people want to come on your show now? And there's no time for little old Garret to go, less than 6 months between appearances.
I apologize for that, my friend. We won't have that big of a gap again. Okay.
You never apologize for your success. I don't know what episode number this will be.
101.
I'm 101.
101 Dalmatians. Yes.
I have to follow up Lee Bermejo.
You follow Lee Bermejo. Yes.
So like the Centennial issue episode, it's like Lee Bermejo 101. You remember Garret? He's back.
Welcome all of you new listeners to the Batman Book Club who were enthralled by the Lee Bermejo episode.
You
track it down if you
good.
didn't listen to it, but strap in. We've got a Twins and Vikings fan right here that is just going to blow you away.
I'm so Minnesotan, and man, we didn't have snow today up here. We're recording this on April 20th. But we had some yesterday, so there you go.
You sent it to Indiana. No, ours was 2 days ago.
All in the
that
mix,
was something
man.
to wake up to. It was wild. Good times. Good times.
How about it? God bless the Midwest.
Before we hop into the book of choice today, I need to ask you, because we talk every day.
Sure. Yes. Yep.
But I guess I haven't directly asked you, Garret, what Batman have you been reading lately, aside from what we're about to talk about?
Recently, I've gone back to podcasts, comics that we've discussed on your podcast before. I did a recent rereading of the Batman Earth 1 series by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Yeah. And I also took a look back at Batman Year One. And the reason I read those, and Earth 1 was a little bit more of a skimming. I read, big chunks of pages, and then I sort of browsed, and then I'd read a bit. I was looking for passages more than anything. And then I reread Year One, because I think there's a whole bunch of those books in the Batman. Yeah. And the Batman is a big deal and is out on HBO Max now as we're recording this. And I wanted to sort of I feel like I'm getting these vibes. Let me go check this stuff out. I have not read anything recently released in the Batverse in some time. I'm trying to think back to the last. I was reading Williamson's run on Batman for a while, and then I've fallen behind. I will catch up on that, especially there's the new creative team is coming over on the main title, and Batman Catwoman. I've stayed current on that. I heard maybe it was the last monthly recap with you and our dear friend Peter. And it sounded like you boys were warming back up to that series again the last time I heard you. So I'm glad, some people are sticking with this. I've been a huge fan of that entire series so far. I know for some people it got a little bit mushy there for a bit, but it's rounding back out to form quite nicely in my opinion. So some old stuff, some recent but not new stuff, and then a little bit of recent stuff. And I got to kind of get caught up on a couple titles I've fallen behind on.
That's a good blend.
Yeah.
You went with the classic in year one. You went with some newer stuff by the what do you want to say? Maybe he's almost like almost GOAT material in the comics world. Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. What a great dynamic duo.
Talk about some gifted artists. That's quite the superpowered pairing.
That's good stuff. Batman Catwoman I think has rebounded. We've got the big finale coming up next. Pete and I will talk about the most recent issue when we do the monthly wrap up, which will be the next episode. You're doing well, chum. Okay. You're doing well. There's a lot going on in the Bat world, but I would recommend, because it'd be easy for you to get caught up. Batman One Dark Knight, the Jock Black Label book.
I've heard good things.
2 books out, 1 book left, and I think that one is June. Book 3, the finale. But yeah, that's just a recommendation.
The other one I've been meaning to get caught up on is, I can't remember if there's 2 or 3 issues out of the World Series. World's Finest.
Series.
Yeah. It's the Twins haven't been there in some time. I think 2
Go
issues.
Twins.
Yeah, go Twins. 91, baby. It's been a while.
Kirby Puckett. Anyway.
Absolutely. Catch her back. But World's Finest. I read the first issue and I haven't read anything else. So if there's 1 or 2 more, I got to get caught up on.
There's only another one. Now they've gotten me because I love Dan Mora's artwork. He's beautiful. He's the artist and he has done covers, but they've been slipping in. They did a Jason Fabok variant for the first issue that I snagged. And they did, my man, Tim Sale, he did a variant for issue 2 that I snagged.
It's gorgeous. Very nice.
I'm really wondering who's coming up next. Lee Bermeo doing a variant for issue 3.
It doesn't quite fit the vibe of that title, but I would like to look at it.
I would love it, but I feel like he would have given us a heads up on his Instagram or something with it if that were the case.
Get a Jim Lee variant on that title.
Jim Lee, maybe Francesca Francavilla, maybe a Jock, Rafael Albuquerque. I don't know. I look forward to seeing
Jorge Jimenez on there, maybe.
Ooh, yeah, right before he hops on the Batman. So you're doing good work, Garrett. You always do.
You got to do the work. You got to put in your work. Otherwise, Peter won't respect you.
Yeah. Peter Vera. Shout out to Peter Vera, who's just a pure walking puff of smoke today. God bless.
Your high holy day.
Holy spirits, religion, darkness, all of that fits into the book of choice. So let's just hop into what you chose. Batman Golden Dawn. So Batman Golden Dawn, written by one David Finch, not David Fincher, people. Okay.
Different dudes.
I'm sure David Fincher could probably write one hell of a comic book.
Right.
But David Finch, illustrated by David Finch and Jason Fabok, was released in 2011 in Batman the Dark Knight issues 1 through 5. It's available physical issues, trade paperbacks, hardcover, DC Universe Infinite, digital, and Hoopla. Garrett, for this episode, what version did you read?
I read a physical copy. I have a collected edition. It's Batman the Dark Knight Golden Dawn Deluxe edition. It's a hardcover.
Nice.
It's got the 5 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, along with a short Grant Morrison story and another David Finch. Just looking at now, Batman: The Return #1,
Yes.
and Superman Batman 75. Those added stories that are not in the Golden Dawn storyline, totally tagged on and just entirely included in this book, just to have an excuse to have enough content to make an oversized hardcover. Don't really have anything to do with Golden Dawn story, but that's the version that I read.
Excellent.
What about yourself, Ryan?
Well, second time, and it almost hurts that Pete's not here for me to hear. It's been a while since I've gotten to grab some floppies. That's for you, Justin Kowalski. I got to go to my long box and grab my floppies from years ago. So here are the Batman: The Dark Knight issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Were those the only 5 issues of Batman: The Dark Knight?
Yes, and that was something that we were going to bring up and talk about here soon, of where this fits in the pantheon of Batman: The Dark Knight, the title. Do you remember? So this is always, and I asked writer extraordinaire, guest extraordinaire, Tim Sheridan, this, who's a professional comic book writer, when he was on a few episodes ago. Cover date matching up with its release date. It's very hard to find the actual release dates of single issues,
right?
At least for me. So Batman: The Dark Knight #1 says first issue January of 2011. You go to the back, there's a good old, the same cover, but Batman's got a Happy New Year hat on, and it says Happy New Year. It says on behalf, and it sounds as if maybe this came out in December or something.
It did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I hate that, because then I end up sounding not credible on my own show, but it gets difficult, and I'm like, ugh. So it came out at the very end of 2010 and the front half of 2011.
And you know what, Ryan? Here's the deal. When you read books, Glenn Whedon, for example, who has written a book on Superman and a book on Batman, and the history of the characters and sort of movement through pop culture. And when he references when issues came out, he almost exclusively uses the cover date, not the actual date that it hit the newsstand, because it's more consistent. At different times in publishing, issues were allowed to sort of rest on the newsstand a bit longer. And where that date on the covers, you may know this, originated from, is that was actually the pull date for the distributors to come back and grab that issue. So at the end of January of 2011 is when they'd pull this issue back off the racks and send it back. Now that's changed a bit over time, but that's how that cover date practice originated.
That's why, Garrett, I need shorter gaps of you being on this show. You always bring the smarts. Now, do you remember, sir, the first time that you read this story?
Yes, in its entirety, I do. I know that I read individual issues back closer to when it was, right when it was being published. Mm-hmm. In its entirety, I want to say it was Christmas of 2013, and I received this as a gift from my brother, and I read it for the first time, sort of the whole series. For some reason, and I'm not sure if it was speculation buyers just before the New 52 turnover hit bought up old issues, but I remember not being able to find, and maybe it just might be that my comic book shop at the time was buying fewer issues at the end of the pre-New 52 run. Maybe thought demand was down, or we're going to invest their money in buying a bunch of copies of the new #1 issues, but I couldn't find it. And it just kind of slipped my mind. So I hadn't read it, end to end in its collected or continuous narration form until the hardcover came out, which I think I got December 2013.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I got the floppies as they came out. I read them as they came out. So in that 2010, 2011 time period. So, yeah. And then I read them. I feel like I read it maybe a couple times, put it in a long box, and then just revisited this last year or 2020. And then still, but there's something about with this story that I kind of forget what happens.
Yeah.
When I go to
I have my
reread it.
thoughts
So-
on why that might happen, but
Okay.
that's
Well, let's just see here then, sir. Of all the Batman stories you could have chosen, why did you choose Golden Dawn?
well, Ryan. One of there's a snarky answer, and there's well, the real answer.
You
might
talk.
be
Give me
this.
two.
Yeah, I'll give you two reasons.
Drop them on me.
One, dude, you've had 100 and now 1 issues of this podcast. You got to reach a little bit further to grab, if you're looking for a storyline or a collected storyline, we could do single issues, till the cows come home.
Mhm.
But if you're thinking about storylines, man, you've covered a lot of them. Like, what hasn't Lauer covered? Let me look at my bookshelf. Let me think about, what's in my mental picture of the Batman book club library shelves and come up with where there's a gap. This presented itself as a gap. So that's also, I think this period of Batman publication is really interesting because for a very long time, you think about like the Morrison run and all the goofy craziness that Morrison did, from continuity bending to, Omega sanctioning, and then the trials of Bruce to get back. And now he's in the cowl. And guess what? We're going to have an international super team of Batman. Like, there's all this crazy stuff that happened just prior to the New 52, where they sort of threw out a lot of it. Batman had his sort of like soft reboot and continuity, but nothing that Snyder did directly referenced kind of where the end of that arc went when the New 52 started. So it's kind of some forgotten stories that haven't been really told before, or aren't as well known as some of the major ones, and then things we've gotten since the New 52. So 1, you've already covered a bunch of books. 2, I think it's kind of an intriguing period in time for Batman stories.
Intriguing, yes. I was very excited that you brought this one up for the reason of I do enjoy, I don't know if you call this a deep pull, random pull sort of deal. Forgotten.
Random, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, random and forgotten. I like those stories. And if you've listened to all the 100 episodes of the Batman Book Club, you would know that there is one episode that is the most frustrating book that I've ever talked about, and there's one that I didn't like. So the odds are pretty good that whatever you're gonna choose, I'm gonna like it. And just so happens I have these floppies. I do like this story. At this time period, I wasn't buying Detective Comics. I was just buying the Batman title, but it was coming but that was ramping up. They were just getting out fillers because Flashpoint was coming.
Right.
The New 52 was coming. You mentioned of the Return included in your hardcover. That followed Grant Morrison's big ending of Batman: The Return of Bruce Wayne, Batman and Robin, and I mean, Final Crisis was already done. I feel like there was some other inclusion, but maybe it was just those two. And The Return was kind of like the epilogue for that, while also showing like right before Batman Incorporated started.
Right.
And it was like, oh, David Finch is illustrating. And this was kind of the first time I saw Finch's art, I think, was Batman: The Return. I was a college kid. No. I was post-college. I wasn't making great money post-college.
Yeah.
So I was sticking to basically just buying Batman comics. But I liked Finch's art. And then it said, follow Batman: The Dark Knight, a new series. I'm like, I can get in on the ground floor of this new series. I'm going to buy every issue. Only for them to say that this is only going to be 5 issues and then it's going to end because Flashpoint is going to muck up the entire DC landscape.
So I was trying to remember that. Was this pitched in advance of this is going to be a limited series? Because like I remember when it was going to be coming out, it was like, hey, like I imagine it going down like this. DC was like, hey, David, we'd sure like for you to continue having the opportunity to tell some Batman stories and draw them. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to be able to do whatever I want. And they're like, cool. We'll give you your own Batman title. And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. Fantastic. Batman, the Dark Knight. And then it had so many, this is why, Ryan, I've already worked my way all the way back to what we were just talking about. There were a ton of delays on this book, which kind of actually ended up with some of the, Jason Fabok. Fabok. All right, there we go. Jason Fabok.
You can always go the Batman Book Club code, Jason F.
Jason F came along and helped with some pencils. And there's a ton of inkers on this book because we had some of those delays. I didn't know if it was intended to be a 5-issue run or if it just kind of ceased to be when the New 52 started, and the intention was there to have been more issues.
So nowhere in these 5 issues does it say, part 1 of 5, part 2 of 5. Yeah, right. It doesn't say that at all. But I remember coming across something because I was intrigued on what this Flashpoint is. And then once they started to promote the New 52 is coming and everything's going to restart, I thought that same thing. In which, if you do look, Batman the Dark Knight title did start again at number 1, as did everything with New 52. And part of what you say, I remember now, of the delays was because I think this was Finch. So Finch was at Marvel. I think he left Marvel for DC and to do this. But like the writing and illustrating part, I think, was the reason for the delays.
Sure.
And then Fabok, he came into this, for those who don't know, he came into this in issues 4 and 5. Prior to this, he did 2 issues of Superman Batman, which were his first published works, 70 and 71, I think, which was in 2010. So earlier so in 2010. So he was new to this. So maybe that, is partial reason. New guy on the book. I don't know. And then Finch was supposed to be, I think, write and draw for the New 52 series, but Paul Jenkins came in and co-wrote, and then I think Finch left pretty early on. I need to reread that series because I think all of that's on DC Universe Infinite. But there is actually, I think it's around like the issue 16 point, there's a Mad Hatter story. And speaking only of the art presented on the page, Ethan Van Sciver drew it, and I think that was a good Mad Hatter story. Maybe Greg Hurwitz wrote it. I don't know, but I know that
you don't get a ton of them, right? Like there's not a ton of Mad Hatter stories out there, so you kind of have to enjoy them when you get them.
Yeah, so I know that's not the point, but I know that I want to revisit that title because I thought it was pretty hit and miss, and the Mad Hatter story actually got me where I was like, that's a pretty good story. But anyways, as far as this book goes, so it's kind of a self-contained, and I think because, but that time period, like of that front half of 2011, I mean, Tony Daniel was on Detective. He did a Sensei story with Dick Grayson as Batman, which was that one was pretty good. But then after that, it just kind of felt like there's a bunch of filler stuff between that and Snyder he was done with his Black Mirror. He was going to be on New 52.
Had been announced. Right.
So it's just kind of like, that is kind of, I feel like, a forgotten era in comics because it was just, let's just get shit out until we get Flashpoint resets everything. Flashpoint was the main event at the time. Everything else was just kind of like,
right. And if in the more, we learn, and some of the creatives have opened up about that period of DC history. Like it was kind of messy, behind closed doors. It was like, we're doing what? And okay, what are the ground rules? Oh, there are no ground rules. The Batman editing team's like, we're keeping our continuity and we're going to find a goofy way just to have it all compacted over like 5 years. And the Superman team is like, well, no, with Superman, we're going to do 2 different books and none of them are going to have anything to do with what we did before. And then Wonder Woman's off. It was all over the place. There was
Batman. I mean, Morrison's sitting there doing this huge epic story, and he's got Batman Incorporated. 8 issues come out, and then the reset happens, which is then like, okay, so wait, what's going on with the continuity of Batman Inc? And then it just kind of became
not
volume 2 issue, whatever, or you know what I mean. And that I remember that kind of being a mess because I was like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen here. Okay.
Right. Right.
was wild.
So
What a time to be alive.
What a time. And, so within that, when we talking about the story here, I think there was this period where, from an editorial standpoint, and from a writing standpoint, there just wasn't a lot of clarity around where do we go with these characters?
Mm-hmm.
What do we build? Should we tell some miniature one-off stories that aren't maybe going to, continue on for obviously dozens and dozens of issues, because there's this impending, major event that's going to really shake things up and cut things off. So reading this book is intriguing to me for a number of issues, because you can kind of see, I think it's one of the reasons why I asked about if it was ever announced as a 5-issue series, like some plot points in here that just floated off to the ether. They were, Flash disrupted the timeline, and they ceased to exist after you get to the last page of issue 5, however you're reading issue 5.
That is a great point, because overall, I think I can just say I like this story. Period. I also think this is a bit of a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
So
we're on the same page.
Okay, and that's what made me smile. One of the reasons when you chose it, because I was like, I've never, as much as you and I have talked, we have never talked about this story. We've never referenced it, brought it up, or anything. So I'm like, I have no idea how Garret feels about this story.
Right.
And go figure. Not only are we in roughly the same section of the country, we're also on the same book on the same page.
Well, the other thing that I like about it, and then for listeners out there that haven't read the book yet,
we're going to spoil it.
Well, you're going to spoil the heck out of this thing because there's no other way to talk about it. By the way, it's been out,
a decade
11
plus.
years. Yeah. So, I mean, come on. You sort of get a Batman kidnap heist featuring well-known villains in the story, like the front half of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the back half is this supernatural Batman story that hints at least, this existing demonic cult that's existed in Gotham for decades and decades, maybe longer, who knows? And those two things kind of mashing up together is an intriguing idea. You don't always get a lot of supernatural Gotham in Batman comic.
GCPD drama that goes nowhere.
Dude, that's one of those things, right? Yeah. Plus you get Gordon in here. Plus you get a precocious kid that has nothing to do really with the story at all and goes nowhere. And also a long lost childhood best friend / love interest, former girlfriend and potential current love interest that we haven't interacted or heard from before. So there's a lot.
A new commissioner did Forbes become the commissioner of, or just the lead of the head of the case? He kicked Gordon out of his office.
Kicked him right out of the office, but I don't think he was ever actually promoted to commissioner.
And we got to see Gordon pissed, and then
nothing.
That was the end of that storyline too.
And also a return of Venom, this time in a diluted street drug form. So like there is so much going on in these 5 issues. It's not all great. It isn't all great. It isn't all necessarily fulfilling because there's you could tell there's threads for storylines that there was never a chance to pull together. But this, love interest, kidnap heist / supernatural storyline is an interesting concept to me, and you don't get a lot of supernatural Batman. You save that for other characters.
Oh boy, it's almost like, where do we even start? You mentioned some of the characters, which was also pretty wild in this. Killer Croc.
Yep, he's there.
Penguin.
Sure is.
Etrigan.
Yep.
Ragman.
He's not Ryman in this one.
He's not. Ragman.
Ragman.
And Lady Blaze.
Yes.
I'm unfamiliar with Lady Blaze.
I have limited exposure to Lady Blaze. I think
Yeah.
in this, at some point, they just started calling her Blaze.
Yeah. I think in here it's just Blaze.
Oh,
you look
really?
her
Okay.
up and I see Blaze plus Lady Blaze. So I'm just I don't know. So
Been
she's
around.
red-skinned devil lady.
Yes, Redskin
There you
Devil
go.
Lady. Yeah.
And then as you mentioned, Gordon briefly, Bullock briefly, this little Dick Forbes briefly,
Lieutenant Forbes.
Alfred from the cave talking to a kid that we don't know, this childhood friend we've never met before, and Dawn Golden,
Mm-hmm.
which is always
Golden
like, wait,
Dawn.
not Golden Dawn. No, good catch. It's just that alone is kind of wild, especially as the story plays out, because it's like Croc kidnaps Dawn for Penguin, but Ragman is gonna take her, but she'd rather Killer Croc take her because the Ragman's gonna take her to her dad, who is also in cahoots with the Penguin.
Yep.
And she just doesn't want to go to her dad because he died a long time ago, but he tried to kill her because they need her soul or her body for the devil. Are you following me here, people? Because all that's what's going on in these 5 issues, and it's kind of like, what the hell is happening? No pun intended.
And also at one point, I think Ragman is her father, like not Ragman as we know Ragman.
He disguised himself as Ragman.
Disguised as Ragman. Plus a kid is being forced or blackmailed to steal the Batmobile by people unknown. And the child is the daughter of a former Wayne employee who is now having financial difficulties. And Alfred helps her kind of, and she also partners with Batman at the very end. Like there is so much, there's so much wild stuff here. And I bet listeners right now are like, okay, guys, well, why the heck are you guys talking about this on a podcast? This sounds like a mess. And I think, Ryan, it was one of the things that, I think this is an overlooked collection, storyline, whatever you want to call it. And I think even those of us who have read it can't always let me scratch the old thinker. I can't remember exactly what goes on in this book because there is so much random stuff that happens and there's so many new characters that are introduced. So we mentioned, all these, but a good chunk of them are new. So Alistair, the evil leader of the cult, and Dawn Golden's father, Dawn Golden herself, Mira, the child that wants to steal the Batmobile, her father that we don't know the name of, Lieutenant Forbes that we've never interacted with before. There's a lot of new stuff that just exists in this story. It wasn't around before, and there was nowhere to go after, and it wasn't included in the New 52 or Rebirth. So it's only here. So if you read this and it's like, hey man, this is kind of a big goofy story, there's some interesting things going on, but it doesn't include characters that I'm familiar with. They're new to me, and those characters didn't live on past this story. It's probably hard to have this cemented in your brain as oh man, I remember that one, and that's really hung with me. It kind of becomes an enjoyable, if somewhat disposable, Batman story.
Boom. I was going to be my follow-up is, Garret, Dr. Grev, why do you think this is a story that I kind of forget what happens every time I go to reread it? And I think you kind of nailed it there, because it's so weird that there's something where there's so much going on and yet you don't remember it. But it is because it all just of goes off into La La Land in a ton of directions. But something that I think is done well is there's a missing socialite and Batman's trying to find her.
Heck yeah.
And then you peel a couple of those layers off of that onion and there's she was a childhood friend. And I do think what was capitalized on really well is it works in the attachment to her, even though this is a character we're just meeting for the first time. They kind of nail home the part of Bruce is latching on, because that was like one of she's attached to, this was right before my parents were murdered. So I think that somehow Finch did a good job with that, of getting us to understand a little bit of the importance of this character.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the critiques I remember seeing of the book was like, when you read through it, we don't ever have a adult Bruce Wayne and adult Don Golden scene. They're never together as Bruce and Don.
Yeah.
It's only ever Batman and Don. And I remember a criticism at the time, because I feel like this was kind of trendy to hate on for a little while. And I think it's much better than that. Listeners might not get that impression so far, but I do think it's much better than that. But I think, to your point, it anchored why this was a personal mission for Batman and Bruce, and why he was willing to like sort of save her at all costs. And Finch writes a really pretty lovely passage of the two playing as children, involving this kite that Thomas and Martha have given Bruce. And, he would fly that kite. Dawn was over with him, and it was this period when his parents were alive. It was just after they came back from Europe, but before he died and was in care of, or before they died, and he went into the care of Alfred forever. And his connection to Dawn then became romantic over the years, but it was really rooted in this spot of children. Dawn with what we learned to be just a abusive, satanic father, and the challenges and trauma that would drive into your life as a child, and Bruce as a child of losing his parents and becoming an orphan tragically. So I thought it was a really smart choice, actually, to give it the emotional heft, as opposed to just some socialite in Gotham. And what does Batman do? He saves people. It ties this to a personal level and anchors it to sort of the psychology and trauma of Bruce, which was quite nice. Like one of the finer storytelling elements, I think, in the story.
Yeah. Another thing that we didn't mention that is interesting that they introduce is this amulet that is Dawn's.
Yeah.
Batman finds it. He's in the Iceberg Lounge, is confronted by Penguin and his goons. He has a great scene there of how he gets out of that. Of course, and the issue 1 ends, a bunch of guns pointed at Batman as he's stuck in a room, and it's like, how's he gonna get out of this? Well, he's gonna, because he's Batman. Yep. And he does in pretty spectacular fashion. But he goes beyond vengeance on Penguin and just starts snapping his limbs on purpose.
Yeah.
Goes wild with it. You end up discovering that he went crazy when he had the amulet in his possession.
Right.
So you think, wow, okay, where are we going with this? Don't know.
Nowhere.
They just drop it.
It gets mentioned later in the book when he's like, you had that amulet your whole life. Because Dawn is talking about, her, she wasn't proud of the way she was behaving, and she was like, became this sort of vapid socialite that didn't care about anything. And he's like, well, you're dealing with the effects of that amulet. I just had it on me for a little while, and it made me go nuts. Like, you got to give yourself a little bit of credit here. You were under this influence for a long time. It was like, oh, okay, well, that's that then.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Huh. I was a little interested in this of, it had loose connection, but the Denny O'Neil Venom story, you could almost say a little bit of that. He's got something in his possession and whatnot. Right. And now he like goes way past his line. He crosses his own line. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting plot thread. And it takes Killer Croc coming in and bashing him from behind to kind of like knock him out of it. But then we don't do anything with it after that. And it's, and that just, I think that's what we get repeatedly in these 5 issues are elements that start off, okay, this seems interesting, but then we don't do anything with it.
Well, and Finch does he is, I think, of these individual concepts and ideas, I can't say I dislike any of them. Like almost everything he throws at us. I'm like, oh, that's fun. Venom as this like diluted or sort of poisonous, kind of harmful, not quite as powerful as the juiced up Bane venom, but this street drug of venom is out there, and Killer Croc's dealing it. Killer Croc's on it, and it's making.
Oh yeah, and all these poor homeless people are getting murdered and eaten and shit, and it's like, oh cool, what's going on with that?
Like there's a demon out there. What's the demon doing? Demon stuff, man. He's just out there doing demon stuff. There's a cult around, and Edgerton's around. They're like, oh yeah, Edgerton's around. What's new with him?
Etrigan?
Yeah, like he.
I thought you were saying Joel Edgerton.
Like no, Etrigan. Yeah, I think maybe I did.
Joel Edgerton and stars as Etrigan.
He's in there. Like he must have been pretty young.
Wow,
surprisingly, he's looked the same age for a while. But Etrigan's in there. Like, what's new with Etrigan? You're like, well, he doesn't rhyme anymore, and he lost a bunch of his powers. And you're like, oh, that could be intriguing. What's up with that? Don't know. Like I don't.
He's got this scantily clad girlfriend. Who drops him pretty quick, and then he's like, all right, Batman, I'm gonna rhyme again, and we're gonna fight some little mini demons.
Yeah, a bunch of them.
And that's where we're gonna end, which is you bring in Etrigan, so he's the cover of issue number 4.
Right.
He was introduced in this story. Before that, I'm not an Etrigan fan.
No,
I don't like him. No, he annoys me.
It's
surprising. No one. My favorite version of him is Batman Damned, Brian Azzarello, and Lee Bermejo, because he's a hip hop artist underground.
Right.
And to me, that was brilliant, and it made total sense. Otherwise, I mean, it's dipping into stuff. I think it might be the rhyming. I'm just not really an Etrigan fan. So, and I always know that he pops up in the story, but then I forget that he doesn't rhyme, and therefore I'm kind of like, okay. Like, he's more tolerable this way with me, but then also it's just kind of, I mean, I love how you put it early on of like the front half is a kidnapping story, and then all of a sudden the back half is so many things, and we've got demons and cults and She-Devil and Etrigan the demon, and they're a couple but they're not, and there's no rhymes, then there's rhymes, and then there's it's kind of bananas. Edgerton's involvement, they works for the story. But also like, I don't know. It's weird because you just said it, how you just said it. There's a lot, but even the stuff that it's just doesn't go anywhere. I wouldn't remove anything out of this for some reason.
No, like I think if this is a pretty quick read. You can sit down and read this thing, and
I read it all in like an hour and a half tops that I wasn't expecting to. I just kept picking up the next issue, read it probably like an hour actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could sit down and burn through the collected edition in 45 minutes pretty easily. Maybe with a little bit of a clip to it. But I think there is a, much longer, like if this was to fill out, instead of a 5-issue arc, a 12, 15 issue arc, you could get all of these points that Finch brings you through. Instead of going from, I've got idea A, B, C, D, and E, and we're just going to hit them all in a row, whether or not it makes total sense as the reader to kind of follow along. Why are we going here? Okay, this makes sense. To like flesh out the distance between A and B and C. Like all of these ideas are good. They're all fun. They're all intriguing on some level. Even the stuff that didn't go forward, I found myself being like, man, that's right. I wish I would have had a chance to figure out what's going on with this Lieutenant Forbes guy, and why is he such a jerk, and how's Jim going to make sure he gets his job back, and who is this kid that stole the Batmobile? How are they able to steal the Batmobile besides the fact that their dad works for Wayne Enterprises or worked? Like, these are storylines I would have liked to see continue. How did Etrigan lose his powers? How did he get them back? I don't know. There's some details in there I would have loved to have some more time with this story. And in a different world, without the delays and without the impending New 52, there probably would have been room for that. And maybe Finch just is like, hey, I've got this collection of like 5 or 6 ideas for Batman. I'm going to plug them into these issues, no matter whether it totally works or not.
We're resetting the universe. Who gives a
right? But that's one of the reasons why I think this is a worthwhile book to read. I don't know. Maybe listeners out there feeling like these guys aren't really selling me on this. I would check it out because all of these individual concepts are fun. It's really goofy to see them slammed up together. And you get a good feel of what was going on at DC in 2011 as they were getting ready to hit the reset button by giving this book a read. Be like, oh man, we're just rushing through stuff to get to the big event, huh? We're filling things up. The best thing I can say about it, besides having fun ideas, is you will never regret looking at this book because it is really, really well drawn. It's a gorgeous book. Visually.
That was my next. Yeah, that's where I was going to hop next. I was probably going to mention that there's somebody listening is probably like, guys, this is your follow-up to Liber Mayo?
I know, right?
And I'm like,
you
yes.
brought Garret back on. And
Here
you
we
guys
go.
complained about a book for an hour.
The art of David Finch. David Finch, he does good work. I fully agree that you don't get bored with what you're looking at all. That definitely helps the somewhat messy story unfolding, is that the art looks great. And then even when Fabok jumps in issues 4 and 5, I mean, that's almost a seamless transition.
I never notice it. I never do.
So, fun backstory of Jason Fabok, because I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan of his since he came on the Batman scene. He actually lived in the same. He lived in the same town as Finch and sent him a portfolio, and Finch kind of mentored him and helped him like almost like a boot camp, I think is what I saw it say online.
Sure.
Teaching him with a lot of stuff, and then got him to send his portfolio to DC. And I think Fabok said before that Jim Lee is like his favorite artist. If you look at Jason Fabok's art, it is an amalgamation of David Finch and Jim Lee.
And that's high praise, that's what you want about, the old criticisms of a lot of what used to happen at Image and then Top Cow, where every panel's a pin-up and you don't see a lot of action or emotion. It's just all sort of stage splash pages shrunk down to fit panels. I mean, give me that stuff all day, every day. I think it's gorgeous. I love that, give me some scratchy lines and thatching, I love it. I think it works fantastically. And Fabok is really, really developed. And looking at it, it's fun for me when I remember that it's Fabok, and I can go back and look at it for growth from something like what he did recently with the 3 Jokers, compared to, this as some of his early published art. And you can definitely see that he's grown. This is still very, very good, but he's refined his craft and his skill where it's not a stretch to mention him, alongside of a name like Jim Lee at this point. Like he's become that good. But even here, a decade plus ago, he was able to not be a distraction filling in for David Finch, who's, a really, really strong penciler.
I think the difference that you can tell if you look closer is in the inking. The first 3 issues that Finch drew were inked by Scott Williams, and Scott Williams, his name may sound familiar because he I think was always partnered up with Jim Lee.
Yes.
Kind of like how Brad Anderson, it seems Brad Anderson's always teamed up with Jason Fabok these days. They were together for 3 Jokers, but then Anderson's also been with the Jeff Johns, Gary Frank team. So he's on all the Earth One books as well. In this story, for the 2 that Fabok did, it's Ryan Wynn and Batt, Batt. Sorry, I have not heard of either of you. but I think you can sense a little
If
bit
you're
of
listening,
yeah.
sorry.
Well, they are. I know Ryan Wynn. It's a Ryan thing. Okay.
Yeah.
We seek out other Ryans and just listen to their podcast, no matter that this.
Yeah.
I got sucked into a My Little Pony podcast last week, but
The convention every September always sounds
insane.
really interesting. I can't wait to hear more about it.
But I mean, back to your point on on the art, I think that the book is great to look at. Helps make the messy story easier to just accept and move along. It's like, yeah, sure, okay. Well, there's a bunch of these little, God, what are those critters called in Chamber of Secrets? Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets, the little blue guys in the movie, and they fly around and they freeze.
Yeah.
It's like it's a bunch of overgrown those fellas. Sure. All over the place.
They're jumping around.
It's like
trying to catch it.
What the shit is happening? There's a bunch of little demons running around here, little baby blue devils, all over the place. But it works. I was gonna mention it gets a little demented and also a little bonkers that Penguin ends up confessing why he kidnapped Dawn in the first place, and it seemed that Dawn and her friends asked Penguin and others as dates as to a gathering as a form of humiliation.
Yeah.
But it's really strange because we hear that from Penguin's mouth only. We see nothing, no evidence. And it's like, that's the only, and then I don't know. It's like, it's weird. And what are you trying to make us think about Dawn Golden here? Because we get the flashback perception of her, the moments with her and Batman, and then out of nowhere it's just like, hey, but she was kind of evil because she made fun of the Penguin. Yeah,
we were all jokes. Then they were bringing us to this ball of grotesque dates. Who could get the ugliest date?
Yeah.
And he, I said she talks about how she didn't like who she was after leaving her father. And, I think that's when Batman's like, well, you had that amulet on you for a long time. It kind of made you a jerk. That's not your fault. And then they're like, oh yeah, the amulet. That's right. We need to say something about the amulet.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. It's, in all these things, as we talk through them, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting storyline if you think about it as being a collection of vignettes more than an overarching story. You're going to enjoy, I think, most of these little vignettes. Batman fighting, all the little demons from Harry Potter, whatever these demons. Those are a fun few pages. The opening sequence is incredibly strong, in my opinion, with Batman tracking down Croc, and then the introduction of Venom. There's there's this horror comic of 5 pages, probably overall, of these homeless guys that are getting hunted by a demon. It's like all of these little chunks are fun to read in the chunks. They just never quite find a way to meld into a strong, cohesive story. But guess what? The art is there to save the day. So if you like these interesting little vignettes and you want to look at really beautiful pencils, go read this book.
And if you like the Cornish pixies from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets,
they're pixies.
Check out Golden Dawn.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
Pixies.
I gotta say, I need to ask Pete, our pal Pete, what he thinks of Penguin in this. That's kind of a grotesque looking penguin.
It is a very strange mouth and tooth design. He has got, I know the intention is to show that he is balding, but it looks like he's got a mohawk in a number of shots. It's just a very sort of edge forward little mutant penguin, rather than a dapper little plump gentleman or a more grotesque mob boss. It's a very unique presentation for Penguin.
He's a proprietor.
I got you.
Fabius, are there any other? I mean, I think all of my notes we've hit everything. No. Is there anything else that you want to bring up?
I would say I haven't read I'm not going to start my own Etrigan book club podcast. Yeah. But I do enjoy
I cannot
Etrigan.
give you the seal of approval from that.
I will not sanction this buffoonery.
I will not. No.
But I actually do enjoy Batman and Etrigan together. You don't always get a lot of them, but that's a fun element for me. I don't know if it makes me want to go and run out and get more, but I think that pairing is nice. Batman, detective, logic, science, plan, and then rhyming demon guy.
Yeah,
that's just kind of fun to me.
I do know he's in your baby child, Ryan Powers' favorite Batman book, Widening Gyre.
Yes,
he is in that one, and then I think I can see it now.
Kevin Smith loves Etrigan. He talks about Etrigan probably more than anybody else.
And then maybe it's the Norm Brayfogle Volume 1 collection where there's some Etrigan in there. I think that might be it. I know he's popped up way more than that. I'm just saying, I'm trying to think of, I know books that I've read he's popped in. And so I don't know, maybe I'll give him another shot sometime. I don't know.
Was he in Justice League Dark War or whatever that was called? Justice League Dark Doom, whatever the animated.
But I think it was just Justice League Dark, but I'm probably wrong. I only watched that once right when it came out, and I don't really remember much.
A lot of violence, but I think Etrigan was in
it. Justice League Dark, yeah. Okay. I'll rewatch that though. I wanted to because I don't remember it.
If you want to see animated intestines getting ripped out of superheroes, that is your movie. It's hard to find anywhere else. Yeah. It's either that or Invincible,
Fantastic. Garrett, let me ask you a few questions now.
Yes, let's hit them.
Number one, what was your favorite part of Batman Golden Dawn?
My favorite part, and this is actually a challenge for a book that I feel like I just spent 40 minutes crapping on the story of in some ways. It was actually kind of a challenge for me to check back and say, what was my favorite part? Not because I didn't think it was good, just because there are so many separate parts to this book. But I do think it is the introduction. It is not the introduction to Don Golden. It is the section of the book after we go into current time, and Batman you get the narration of Batman on the hunt. He is outside waiting in the rain for someone to leave a building. This is going to be tough. And it turns out that it's Killer Croc. Batman quickly assesses that he is on, that the new street grade version of Venom, and starts thinking through, how does he physically, Croc is going to basically not be somebody he can take down just with old fisticuffs. And he starts talking about how to use things against him, and uses something from the environment that Croc actually smashes him through against him to then knock him unconscious. I thought that was just like, oh, this is a great passage. This is just fun. Batman is hunting somebody. Batman's fighting somebody. There's a X factor that Batman has to account for, and he ends up finding a way to be victorious because that's what Batman does. I think that's my favorite part of the book. It doesn't have as much to do with anything that the book's about, so take that as you will. But I thought that was just a really, really well executed few pages there.
I forget what he said. Oh, so he threatened the quote unquote antidote for the venom that he threatened Croc with.
And it was going to be worse than any withdrawal anybody had ever had. Like, you'd rather die.
And then he's like, his internal monologue, he just drank soda water and some food coloring. I like that.
I liked it too.
I got to say that my favorite part actually is that opening of issue 2. I really like Batman diving behind the desk and shooting his grapnel gun with this thing that's bouncing off, because it just gets me of like, wait, what is that? As it's bouncing all over the place. The guy's like, some kind of wire, and he touches it, and Penguin's like, no, you idiot. And then you see that it ends up wrapping them all up or something. I really like his escape out of that situation. I really like that. And then him going up the steps, that yellow oval, hashtag team yellow oval, just glowing. I like that.
The incorporated yellow oval, which is like the most yellow oval of all yellow
of y'all. Yeah. That sucker lights up. How about a favorite panel? An even tougher decision.
It really is. And of course, I know you're always going to ask this. There is a panel. Now I'm struggling to find it, Lauer.
Oh boy.
I should have known this was coming. I had it marked, and of course my mark came out. It's right around the same. It's within. So it's actually okay. I've got it now. It's a big splash page where it is, kind of your classic. We're going to end the issue. How's Batman going to get out of this one? And it's Batman is on the right side of what essentially is, 2-panel spread.
The end of issue 1.
Issue 1. Is it okay? In issue 1, before we get into the escape and the wire zipping around at the part you were just talking about. Yeah. But you get your slick looking Matrix-ish henchmen with their glasses and their giant guns. You get this goofy design of Penguin standing there. And then Batman's in the corner, and it's our hero's in a corner. What's he going to do? Like, this could be a poster on a bedroom wall back when, if you were I wasn't a kid, I was out of college and working when this came out. Might have been married. Jeez, I think I was married. I'm getting old, Lauer.
Oh my heavens.
Yeah, but this could have been a poster on a bedroom wall, and the detail on the bat suit's fantastic. All the way down to this like knuckle guard on the glove, before you get to the scallops, the detail on the utility belt. I had forgotten that this incorporated suit like ditched the briefs before, ditching the briefs in the new 52 became the standard, or continued on that standard, I guess. I just thought it's a well designed, it's almost a double splash page. There's one small additional panel in there, but it's visually imposing.
I'm gonna go to the opposite end of the book of that issue and go with the spread. It's similar in a way of it's almost a full 2-page spread, but it's got that one bar on the left side where it has the Golden Dawn part 1, but it's Batman in the rain, that yellow oval. Yeah, hashtag Team Yellow Oval. It's kind of funny because you've got that panel all the way to the left. It's like interrupting the 2-page spread it's like the complete opposite of what you just said for yours, because yours had the one panel on the right interrupting this full spread. So
back in the day, if this would have come out in the late 90s or early 2000s, that nearly 2-page panel would have absolutely been included in the middle of an issue of Wizard, the Guide to Comics, as the tear out poster, and would be on bedroom wall for sure. For sure.
I love it just because, it's Batman a little bit, in shadow, in a storm, lightning behind him, and then that glowing yellow oval. Yeah. I think that's a great looking page. Now, would you like to see this story adapted in animation?
I would like to see elements of this story adapted into animation. I think there could be a very good, call it 68, 72-minute animated movie here. I would like to see them ditch a couple aspects of the storytelling to be able to do it well. I would probably say, let's cut through the chase of even though, as I said, it's my favorite part of the book, the section with Croc and Penguin. I think there would be an interesting animated movie here that just deals with Batman / Bruce, his childhood best friend and then teenage love interest, who turns out to be the daughter of a cult leader who is trying to kill her in a ritual, and he has to save her and go through all of that and bring in Etrigan and make it this demonic cult solely focused movie. Because I think, so often when we see adaptations with where the DC animated movies kind of try to stick the landing on runtime, you're already compressing story elements. And this thing is, that's what it is. It's 5 issues of compressed storytelling elements that probably should play over a 12-issue arc. So yeah, give me Batman, Etrigan, Dawn, goofy, crazy cult. And then I can picture animated little blue demons flying at Batman and he's got to take them out. Like, I would watch that for sure. yeah, we gotta peel back. There's no room for Gordon and Forbes. There's no room for little girl stealing the Batmobile. And I would be hesitant on Penguin and Croc.
Okay.
How about you, Ryan? Would you like that one?
Oh,
Or the opposite, get rid of Dawn and just do everything else.
I could almost see this as a Justice League Dark movie.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like
just
a
name
Batman
it that.
yeah.
But then it's like, as I'm trying to think of, okay, well, how do you work Zatanna in there? How do you work Constantine in there? You know,
Sure.
how do you work Swamp Thing in there? Something, and I'm like, I don't know, because I feel like just Batman and Etrigan, and then I'm like, so maybe it's a Batman Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
But then that's a dark story to be a Brave and the Bold, I feel.
What if you said it in the 40s?
But okay, sure. There you
Like
go.
you did a period piece with this, and she is, you know, it doesn't have to be before, it could be 30s.
I think something like that
30s.
could work for it. And I wonder if, and I didn't mention this, that I do applaud that this story ends in a tragic note.
Yeah.
All of this hoopla, no pun intended, into my favorite app.
Let's say new sponsor.
Yeah. But I mean, all of this for Dawn, and then it is just like 3 pages before the end, she gets stabbed and dies.
Yep. No, she's
And
gone.
I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting if they did a movie on that and they left it on. Not only would you be like, what the hell, with all of the meandering plot lines that don't get a punctuation at the end.
Yeah.
Also,
What a downer.
Dawn gets killed, and then it's just like credits, and then it's Etrigan the rapper.
Yeah,
singing
he
or
shows
something,
up,
you know.
shows up. He's dancing over the credits on the right side of the screen or something.
Are your emotions feeling poor? Because Don Golden is no more. You know, something like that. I don't know.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
Do you have any final thoughts, Mr. Grev, on Batman
Golden
Dawn?
Hopefully you've all stuck through us talking about how sort of like goofy and detached parts of this book is. But I would still encourage you to read it. There's ways to read this thing. You know, you can get it on the app. You can probably find it on Ryan's Hoopla thing.
Yeah,
you can find you can find this online. They actually, I think they made a whole bunch of these hardcover deluxe versions you can find on sale out there on different websites. The art's great. It is a snapshot in time of an uncertain period creatively with the existing stories going on before a major relaunch that, you know, we're still feeling the ramifications of the New 52 even in the post rebirth world. So it's worth reading. It's got good art. It's got good ideas that aren't always handled the best, and you know, it's a fun, good looking Batman story. So don't go in thinking it's the Long Halloween, and you know, you probably won't. I know, right? You probably won't be disappointed by it.
I think the story is like a C. The art is like an A. So it lands in around like a B.
That's
a B,
great.
B minus.
Yep.
And you know what? That's good enough for me with a Batman book. And that's kind of what this, I mean, that sums up this story to me of, it's good enough for me for a Batman book. It's not going to change my life. There's a reason I don't read it a ton, but I also do not dread rereading it.
Yeah.
So I think we had a good discussion about it. We recognize it by its fault, but I mean, we like it anyway. So track it down on all the ways that I mentioned at the top of the show. If you haven't read it before, we just spoiled the hell out of it for you, but it's still kind of it's a trip. It's quite a journey.
And we didn't really talk through like in chronological order how the story unfolds necessarily. So you don't know. I mean, and quite honestly, there's a lot of this stuff that could get flipped and flopped all over the place. Just wait till you find out what happens in what order.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But this, I mean, Batman Golden Dawn, check it out if you have an hour to spare and you want something you haven't read before. So Garrett, always a pleasure having you on the show, talking to you just in general.
It's fun being here.
It's a great time.
I love to talk. I love to talk about Batman, so it works out really well. Thanks for having me on.
If for some reason these fine folks aren't following you, don't know where you're entertaining them in other spaces in the world, why don't you go ahead and let them know?
Sure. Yeah. Because I said I like to talk, I'll let you know where you could, at least type talk. We say type or
Type talk.
Type talk, colloquial talk, internet talk with me. You can do that over on Twitter. You can find me at Garret Wato. That is at GarretWato. You could also, if you don't just want to read words that I write, you can listen to words that I say. I'm the host at the Batman on Film podcast. Please check out the podcast feed wherever you get your finest podcasts, including this one, or go to batman-on-film.com and head to the podcast tabs, and you can listen to me talk there too. I was just recently on a episode of Comic Binge with Paul Herman and Jay Yaz. We were talking about Batman, talking about influences to the Batman. So if you'd like to check that out, I think that's up over on their YouTube page. Comic Binge. It was a good conversation. We talked about a couple of the books that I talked about when you asked me what I've been reading lately. So there's that.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, look at that
That's
segue.
fancy.
You had to go
Fabulous.
back an hour and 10 minutes to make that connection, but God darn it, I did it.
You did. Proud of you. Fantastic. Give Garret a follow if you don't already. He gives us some humdingers of tweets in the old Twitter sphere that can light up
Sometimes
the world.
they go big when you wouldn't even expect it. And you're like, well, what do I do with
crazy.
this now?
And as he's said, he's invited me on multiple times to be on the BLF podcast with him, which is always fun. Check out the BLF podcast because recently I was on there, but Garret was not. And Sean Murphy took his place. Yes,
I know.
The one and
Wow.
only Sean Murphy on the Batman on Film podcast with I. And gotta say, it was an awesome conversation. I'm not saying this just to rub it in Garrett's face because he wasn't able to be there, but it was an awesome conversation. Track that down and listen to it because Sean is awesome. But please make sure that you have read Beyond the White Knight issues 1 and 2 because he definitely talks about those. Wait, 1 and 2. 1 at least.
1.
And then he talks about the future, but he does give a spoiler warning.
Yeah.
Check that out. But as for the Batman Book Club, you can follow it on Twitter and Instagram at thebatmanbc for upcoming episodes, latest episode drops, and sometimes even some giveaways. You can also subscribe to the Batman Book Club YouTube channel, where I have the video version of my conversation with the one and only Lieber Mayo up there, in case you want to see our faces as we talk to each other. Make sure to track down the last episode 100, if you haven't already, to listen to Lee and I's conversation. It was a lot of fun. Big thanks to him yet again, because he didn't have to do that. And he sat down and we talked for a while. It was great. You can email with questions or comments at thebatmanbc@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, there's a variety of ways you can do that. One is patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Another is TeePublic. If you want to support the Batman Book Club on merchandise and such, you can do that at teepublic.com and type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club in the search, and there'll be a list of different designs and stuff where you can order t-shirts, hoodies, notebooks, onesies for your youngsters. I don't know what else do I got. iPhone case if you want
iPhone
that.
case.
Yeah, why not? Who wouldn't? But if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-okay. You can do it by rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts. A link to the rate and review page on Apple Podcasts is in the description of this episode. The more reviews the Batman Book Club gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So for Mr. Minnesota, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read my Batman comics.